Welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro. Of course, we're remembering that horrible day on 9/11 where we lost close to 3,000 people, and we're hearing your stories. By the way, if you were wondering, Vegas doing a lot of pretty cool things in remembrance. This morning, Valley High School had an event at 6:30 a.m. Palo Verde High School and Neal Elementary School honoring victims of 9/11 as well today. Las Vegas Fire and Rescue did an event this morning at 6:50 a.m. And then tonight, if you missed any of those events, downtown Fremont Street, 9/11 Memorial Show on the canopy at 7:15 p.m. The march that they're having there will continue to 3rd Street. It starts on Main Street. And again, that, I believe, starts at 7 p.m. tonight if you want to be involved in any of those local events, remembering 9/11, and Vegas does a great job of doing that. So joining with us on the line right now, her name is Robyn Walensky, a veteran news reporter and anchor covering crime, terrorism, politics, breaking news. She actually covered extensively the 1993 World Trade Center bombings, and she was there on 9/11. Very close, to, sadly, to where those buildings, the World Trade Center buildings, collapsed. So we want to get her story. She joins us on the line right now. Robyn, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm good. A very sad, sobering day 18 years later. Parts of me, it feels like it was yesterday, and then there's other days where it seems like a long time ago. I think the biggest concern, and I know you have so many retired people, firefighters, police living in Las Vegas from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, is how many of us are sick, reporters who have passed away.
Yeah.
We lost a retired policeman. His name is Mike Sheehan. He was a TV reporter at the local Fox affiliate in New York. He passed away very recently of 9/11-related cancer.
Oh, my God.
Tonight I'm leading a prayer service in the community I live in Atlanta. I'm friends with a man. His name is Billy Kelly. He's a retired New York City police officer, 20 years, and he worked in forensics. And as the debris was being carted away from Ground Zero over to Staten Island, the toxins were all over his skin. And we all just had those little painter's masks,
right?
The kind you use when you paint your house, and which clearly wasn't enough. Well, anyway, he has 3 skin cancers, all related to 9/11 toxins.
Oh, my God.
And he just learned a few weeks ago that the Merkel cell carcinoma is now in his pancreas and liver.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That's terrible.
It's terrible.
It's firefighters, policemen, and all those who are helping at that site. Yeah, many of them have become sick, and sadly, some of them have lost their lives because of it. But you bring up a good point, too. It wasn't just them. We're also remembering people like you, reporters, people in the media, people that were even far away from that site that were dealing with that stuff. People, and I'm glad you brought that up. We need to remember all those people. So I want you, Robyn, to give me your specific story. My understanding is you were very, very close to the buildings, or at least one of the Twin Tower buildings when it collapsed. Take me through this day when you got the first phone call. I would imagine sometime around 9 a.m. or thereafter. Take me through the day up until the point where one of those buildings collapsed, and you were, I would imagine, running for your life.
Yeah, I was a reporter for Associated Press Radio. The day before, I spent the whole day inside the New York Stock Exchange building, which is about 2 very short blocks from where the Twin Towers used to stand tall. And I was on the 8:30 meeting with AP out of Washington, and my assignment was to go back and cover the New York Stock Exchange, the opening bell at 9:30, and then it was the mayor's race, the primary day in New York that day, which obviously was canceled. And, we all know the story at 8:43 of the first plane hitting. It was a beautiful day in New York. Then the second plane hitting, you definitely know it's terrorism then. And for those of us who, the 93 bombing is relevant because that's when radical Islamic terrorists wanted to topple the towers 8 years prior. And they put the bomb, remember where they put the bomb in the Ryder truck?
Yep.
And they tried to blow it up from underneath to take it down that way. And I covered also the federal trial of the blind sheikh, Rahman.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a kind of a handful of reporters. You have to be of a certain age. You had to have been working in New York at the time that we were in the 93 bombing, reported on that, covered the federal trial of the sheikh. And it was brought out at the trial, and it said, the prosecutor said, Your Honor, it was the goal of these 2 terrorists, the blind sheikh and Ramzi Youssef, to topple the towers. And so when did it ever stop being the goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 8 years later, when you forward up the clock, and you started hearing the words, Osama bin Laden. For those of us, Al-Qaeda was not a household name back then, But for those of us who had covered that trial within the last 8-year period, we're like, oh, wow, here they are again, like a roach in your house.
Sure.
You see one, but, there's many, many more behind the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a lot of blame to go around, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. We can blame Bill Clinton for sure. We can blame George Bush, the son, for sure. Everyone was really asleep at the wheel. And then you forward up the clock, and I'm on a payphone on the morning of 9/11. And if you can remember payphones, you can't really see because you're in a little box, with the three sides. For those of us dinosaurs that remember payphones. And I start hearing people screaming, "Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!" And I'm thinking to myself in my head as I'm on the air with AP Radio, Rita Foley, the anchor in Washington, what could be worse than both buildings being on fire? Like, how are they going to put the fire out?
Right.
When all of a sudden the South Tower is like collapsing in slow motion, and people are like running for their lives. Cops are yelling, GTFO, get the blank
Robyn,
out.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Where were you exactly when that first building collapsed?
I was like a couple blocks north of the tower.
Oh my God! Were you
up at this?
That's incredible.
Yeah,
so you saw? I would imagine. So you didn't actually see the second plane hit the building, or did you?
No, I didn't see that. That's when I bolted out the door of my apartment.
So you're bolting out the door. You got the information on what was going on. You're driving as close as you can as a reporter to try to get as much information as you can. And you're telling me you're 2 blocks away. A few blocks north of there. Oh my God!
On a payphone of where there's 100+ people in line, and I have the little AP mic flag on my microphone.
Right.
And so I'm using that, and I'm like, I need to get on the air. And, and I'm standing in line with all these people that are crying and trying to convince them that I need, because after the North Tower got hit, Verizon, AT&T, the cell phone service, you have to rewind your mind.
Of course.
Years ago, the antenna, once that building was hit and the North Tower, all the cells were out in New York City.
And we've all seen the video. Obviously, we've seen videos from every direction of the buildings, at least that first building collapsing and then the second one thereafter. But when that first building collapses, the roar and the noise and the scene, it looks like a scene from a movie, right? You got the big dust cloud. People are running and screaming.
Right.
What were you? I mean, what did you see at that point?
It looks like a Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
It does. It does. And then so I'm running north with all these other people, right, with my old tape recorder and my notepad, of which there are no notes on 9/11. You can forget it. If you can't tell the story from what you can see with your own eyes and hear with your ears, you're in a lot of trouble. So that went on the ground. But I'm running north, and then you stop, and then the dust cloud is coming up behind us. And I run into this woman who's going the other way, and I grab her arm, like, elbow to elbow. I put my arm under her elbow, literally, and say, ma'am, you cannot go down there. Everybody's going this way. You've got to come with me. Mm. And this woman is absolutely hysterical, and she's telling me a whole story about her husband, who is the floor warden. So after the 93 bombing, they had you're the floor warden. You get everybody out if there's an emergency, and then you leave last. And allegedly, he was still alive before the building came down. Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, this guy appears in the street looking like Man of the Moon.
Oh, my God.
His hair shampooed and plastered. You can see a picture on my Facebook.
So her husband just appears.
Well, he's walking up the street with all these other people, his coworkers, all 100 people who worked on his floor for the Port Authority. He got all of these people out, like on the 65th floor.
Oh, what a hero!
Below the impact.
So wait a second. I want to, if I may, I want to rewind a little bit. When that dust cloud happens, what are you doing? Are you running with everybody else?
Yeah. Running north, yes. Get away from all of that poison.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then I run into the lady who's going the opposite direction and just grab her. I literally grabbed her and said, ma'am, you can't go down there.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
And the dust cloud is like coming around the corner. I have photographs of all this. We'll get to that. And so anyway, so he appears in the street. He's got the big sweat marks under his arms on his shirt, and his hair is shampooed and plaster. If you can, like he looked like Man on the Moon,
Wow.
And she's hysterical, crying, and people start, clapping around us. And all of a sudden, I start to see flashes of light, and it's this big 6'2" guy whose name is Gary Kane.
Mm-hmm.
And Gary Kane, some stranger, is your senses were so heightened. Like, why is there a flash of light over my head?
Right.
And this guy is taking photographs, and I motioned to him with my eyes only because I'm trying to record the interview of the husband and wife and his story and how he got the hell out of there.
While all this is happening, you're still trying to do your job.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm in play and record mode on the tape recorder, and they're taking a picture. He's taking pictures, and I motioned to him with my eyes, like the don't move look, like I need you to stay there. I need these pictures, for AP, Associated Press. Anyway, they became world-famous AP photos. His name is Gary Kane. And I heard from him. It really chokes me up. I heard from him just a few minutes ago on Facebook. He's like forever in my life. And Gene and Chuck Mara, wherever they are, they had, no children. They're each other's, sweethearts and have been married all these years. They only have each other.
That is incredible. How long were you trapped in there, by the way?
Well, after this whole incident, the smoke was so bad, and we were afraid to go north to like the United Nations or Central Park because everybody was saying they were going to blow that up. So I hid out in a storage locker in a restaurant with like a meat locker, like underground. And there was one TV, and I was with like 25 strangers. I don't know who these people were, but I was just hiding out to get away from the bad air. If you notice in a lot of the video of 9/11, you'll see people hiding in restaurants and closing the doors. Well, a lot of those restaurants in New York City have basements where they keep all the food, and meat lockers and refrigeration and generators to keep electricity. So I was down there for a couple of hours using a landline and going live from like a meat locker of some restaurant.
Robyn, that is the definition of commitment. I applaud you for that. And honestly, thinking in my mind, this basically, I'm thinking like Independence Day, that scene where the spaceship comes down and just tries to attack New York City and everybody's running crazy. Anyways, I have two questions for you. One, have you suffered any maladies or illnesses related to 9/11 so far in your life? And two, I would imagine, and I was in Iowa at this time. I was not in New York. I'm in the Midwest, didn't feel it as much as the East Coast did. What was the thinking what could possibly happen next? What was the dread that came along with thinking about that?
Well, I'll take the second question first. You're kind of like the people say, well, how did you do your job? How did you stay on the air that whole day, the next day, months later? Those fires burned for over 3 months, and I never left. I eventually, about 10 years later, left and went to New Orleans to host my own radio show. But for 10 years, I was there and inhaling that. And you have to really separate yourself, like the emergency room doctor, right? Somebody comes in with a gunshot wound to the head. If the emergency room doctor, they can't treat you if you're thinking, oh, that's my wife I have to operate on, right? You have to separate yourself like a doctor. And so that's kind of how I dealt with it. Like, okay, this is my job, and I need to tell this story because Associated Press Radio went on Armed Forces Radio that day via AOL. And so I knew my reports were being heard by service people in the military in that moment in time. So I felt that I was kind of like the eyes and ears for the country and the world and people in London and wherever else. So I was very responsible in the sense that there were so many rumors, but I never went on the radio and talked about rumors. I talked about what I could see with my eyes and what I could hear with my ears and nothing else. Health effects. I've had a whole bunch of health effects. Recently, in the last 6 months, I've had my entire thyroid removed. I have terrible PTSD. Sometimes I have a cough. I get checked out at least 2 to 4 times a year, chest x-rays, bronchial allergies to things I was never allergic to. In the World Trade Center Relief Fund, I'm glad that they refunded it. We're going to need to refund it again. I think that leaving politics out of it, that Jon Stewart did an amazing, whether you like him, love him, or hate him, he did an amazing job.
Absolutely.
Going to Capitol Hill.
I agree.
And, after that retired policeman passed away, they gave Mitch McConnell, his policeman brothers, gave his badge to Mitch McConnell,
who doesn't deserve it,
in the Senate, and said, "This is for you, sir. We need to get this passed." I thought it was a very powerful moment.
It was.
And and I know we have limited time here, but I want to say this to your listeners: on 9/12, we were not white people, we were not black people, we were not Asian people. We were one people. We were one America. We were Americans. And the terrorists don't care if you vote Democrat or Republican.
You're so right.
For what we stand for.
Mm-hmm.
People have forgotten that in this country.
Robyn, you are so right.
One people.
I just said that. I swear, Robyn, before we had you on the show, I just said that in the last segment. I remember most now about 9/11. Obviously, you were there. But I remember how together we all were. It didn't matter where we were from or what we looked like or what our sexual orientation was. Or we were joined
all
in together.
Americans.
Yeah, and I remember that George W. And I, like I said, I wasn't a huge George W. Bush fan, but I remember when he grabbed that megaphone and said, "We hear you. The world hears you." That was a very powerful moment for this country, and it was incredible. And I look at not to get into the political divide today, but we're very divided as a country, race, politically, anything. I mean, we're just so divided, and I think that's what we should take away now from 9/11. Besides remembering all those heroes and those that have lost their lives, remember how it's sad that it takes a tragedy like that to bring us all together. I want to ask you this a little bit. Talking about that site, the 9/11 site, I think Manhattan did such a fantastic job. Everyone did such a great job at the memorial and speaking with the families. What do you want to see happen here? They rebuilt that building, one of them anyway, but I just think the memorial is fantastic. The reason why I bring that up is, as you know, Robyn, we had the biggest mass shooting in the history of this country right here in Las Vegas a few years ago, coming up on a few years. And they're turning that site into a parking lot for the Raiders. Now, eventually they're going to do some sort of memorial there, but I think they are handling it just completely the wrong way. The way Manhattan did it with the memorial and putting everything in place, being sensitive to all those that lost their lives, I just don't feel like they're handling it right here. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, there was there was a lot of bickering at the time, but in the end, it really worked out. Where the land, the two squares, the footprints of the tower, nothing will ever be built on there, and that's when you see the fountains, and then the museum is next to it, and then the new World Trade Center building is farther over to the north of it, and it's sacred ground of so many people that were literally murdered there by terrorists. And the same, I go to Vegas all the time, and I really believe that there should be something there that should not be a parking lot.
Right.
And in Boston, the same, where the terrorists, radical Islamic terrorists attacked the Boston Marathon a few years ago. They don't have a memorial. There's not even a plaque on Boylston Street.
That's sad.
Which is sad. That's wrong. And when we sweep history under the carpet, and we ignore it, just like in 93, they came back and hit us even harder. I mean, this is, that's like a la people who forget about the Holocaust. They're Holocaust deniers. They're 9/11 deniers. They're conspiracy theorists. It's very dangerous. We're so worried about what President Trump is saying in 40 characters on Twitter. That's not what this is about. The terrorists don't care if you vote for Trump or Biden or anyone else.
That's true.
They see us as Americans, period, whether we're Muslims or Jews or Christians or whatever, Hindus. It doesn't matter. They see us as one, and yet we're divided. And as long as we're divided, you can't beat them because they're all playing for the same team.
Oh, you're right.
And it's a very, very scary dynamic in our country. And I would encourage people to let the politics go because, if you're old enough, as we all are, the pendulum swings in this country. We have very wide swings to the left, Obama, very wide swings to the right. We go back and forth with our politics. I would tell you that George Bush, the son, gave us Barack Obama, and Barack Obama gave us Donald Trump, and Donald Trump will bring someone else after him.
You're right.
So we need to, really get off of that and worry about our airports. Let me tell you, are not safe. You saw within the last 2 weeks this guy who was about to sabotage and tamper with a plane.
Yeah, thank God he didn't conquer
Miami.
it. Yeah.
In Miami, to the flight American Airlines to the Bahamas, and his name is, you can go and look it up, what his name is and what he believes in. He'll tell you that he was worried about some sort of union dispute. I'll tell you that
scary.
A union dispute had nothing to do with what he was up to.
Of course not.
And, is he part of a sleeper cell?
Very possible. Robyn, that's a good question. It's very possible. We cannot think that this cannot happen again. We have to be very vigilant as a society. If we see something strange, we have to report it, and we have to do everything in our power to make sure that nobody can take over and hijack a plane ever again. Robyn, I know this is a difficult day for you, so first of all, let me just say thank you for sharing your story. People like you need to be heard on this very sacred day. You're so good at what you do, and we appreciate you taking some time to join us. Also, I just wanted to mention you're a co-editor, author of the book covering catastrophic broadcast journalist report 9/11. Go out and get that. Proceeds for that go to charity. So you've done so much great work, and I'm so sorry you had to live through this, but I think you're one of those very important people that needs to tell your story. And we're glad that you're doing okay. Sorry that you had to go through what you went through, but thank you so much again for taking the time.
You're welcome. And the next time I'm in Vegas, I hope to stop by and meet you all.
Yeah, I would love to have you come in, and we'd love to interview you, not just about, of course, this situation, but your career. And you've covered a lot of amazing events in history.
Yeah, I was out there during the O.J. trial back in the
O.J.'s back in Vegas, so that's definitely a subject we can talk about. He's on Twitter.
We could revisit
yes.
Well, we could revisit it.
Absolutely.
No question. Robyn, hit us up. We'd love you to come in. Thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks a lot, Robyn.
Wow, that was fascinating. Robyn Walensky, we got to take a quick break.
You aren't going to find a more powerful interview than that.
Yeah, no question. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to the Vegas Tape.